Israel is at war. We didn't want this war. It was forced upon us in the most brutal and savage way. But though Israel didn't start this war, Israel will finish it.
Israel's startling warning about the fulfillment of end-time prophecies has sent shockwaves wordwide. As casualties escalate in Gaza, Israel is already the epicenter of the international media attention. But this shocking revelation has many people concerned. Seeking the fulfillment of their destiny, the Israeli Jews have united to reclaim their ancestral worship place, the Temple of Solomon, which, according to biblical prophecies, will bring the world to an end. Will the world allow it, and what will happen if the third temple is rebuilt? What implications will this have? Let's find out together.
The Temple Mount came back into Jewish hands, opening the door to the building of the third Jewish temple. Some called it a kiss from heaven.
For the Palestinians, the end times could not look much different. The streets of Gaza already spell death and destruction as the IDF continues its push against the Palestinian militias in the region, following the attacks on October 7th. But imagine seeing scenes of death and destruction all around you, with no respite and no escape. The concept of the end times in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam often intertwines with prophecies related to Israel. In Christianity, for instance, the Book of Revelation references Jerusalem as a focal point for apocalyptic events, including battles and the coming of the Messiah. The prophecy of Armageddon, a climactic battle between good and evil forces, is also linked with this region. Such themes have also been time and again toyed and teased with in popular fiction like Rosemary's Baby and The Omen, both of which draw heavily from religious themes. These movies use artistic license and creative storytelling rather than religious doctrine to depict apocalyptic themes, but they paint a dark, hopeless picture indeed, enough to send chills down the spine. And it's not all in a vacuum. Biblical prophecies such as those found in the book of Ezekiel, Daniel, and Revelation predict the gathering of nations against Israel, leading to a final battle. Some interpretations view Israel's restoration in 1948 as a significant event signaling the beginning of the end times, marking the re-establishment of the Jewish state after centuries of dispersion. However, religious texts are subject to various interpretations, and prophecies concerning the end times are complex and diverse across different faiths and denominations. Perspectives on how Israel ties into these prophecies can vary widely. Not only will we explore things from Israel's perspective, but also connect the dots with factual information supporting Israel's final warning of the end times. But before going down that road, let's get some historical context first. Nestled at the convergence of Africa, Asia, and Europe, Israel's history is marred by conflict and blood. Historically, this region, also known as Palestine and the Levantine coast, has held a pivotal geographic position. Today, its boundaries touch Lebanon to the north, Syria to the northeast, Jordan to the east, Egypt to the southwest, and the Mediterranean Sea to the west. This strategic location has rendered Israel a vital crossroads for trade, culture, and civilization. Israel's historical roots are tangled with the stories of enduring civilizations, the ebb and flow of empires, and the unwavering connection of people to their land. Evidence of human settlement in this region spans back to the Paleolithic era. From there on, the land embodies a mosaic of ancient cultures where the imprint of diverse civilizations such as the Canaanites, Philistines, Israelites, Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, and Romans has been deeply etched. Today, Israel stands at a juncture in history where it can redefine the world's trajectory by heralding the culmination of an era. The story of the Kingdom of Israel, which later became an inspiration for the State of Israel, harks back to the settlement of the 12 tribes of Israel in Canaan during the 13th century BCE. These tribes descended from the patriarch Jacob, who is also seen as a respectable figure in Christian and Islamic tradition. These 12 tribes were knit together by common ancestry and beliefs. The societal landscape underwent a metamorphosis when the region came to be ruled by a united monarchy under the leadership of King Saul, succeeded by the notable reigns of King David and King Solomon, both of whom are seen as prophets or messengers of God by the Muslims. Saul's ascension marked the consolidation of governance and converted the tribes into a cohesive kingdom. Renowned for his military acumen and sagacity, his successor, King David, who is also said to have at one point defeated the giant Goliath, expanded the kingdom's borders and fortified his frontiers. His rule fostered stability and prosperity, and with the conquest of Jerusalem, he gave the kingdom a new capital city. King Solomon, inheriting his father, David's throne, elevated the kingdom's stature even further. He also erected the inaugural temple in Jerusalem as a nucleus of worship in the Jewish faith. The temple emerged as a cultural and religious epicenter, drawing pilgrims from distant lands. Tragedy struck, however, when the Babylonians, led by King Nebuchadnezzar, sacked Jerusalem in 586 BCE, more than 3 centuries after the death of King Solomon. The Babylonians laid waste to the city and tore down the temple. This cataclysmic event ushered in an era of exile for many Israelites. However, emancipation soon followed for the Jews in the form of a decree from Cyrus the Great of Persia. Shortly thereafter, the Israelites built a second temple on the site. But history echoed once more when the Romans, under Emperor Titus, destroyed the second temple in 70 CE as punishment for the Jewish revolt against the Roman authority in the region. Though physically lost, the temples endured as eternal symbols within the hearts and faith of the Jewish community, leaving an enduring imprint on the bedrock of Israel. And now, the Israelites want something more than just a symbol. They want their old temple back. And at the heart of this desire stands Jerusalem, the holy city. Jerusalem is often hailed as the nexus of faith for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Each holds Jerusalem in reverence for its distinct religious narratives and profound ties to pivotal figures and events. Within Judaism, Jerusalem is the spiritual and historical core of the Jewish people. It's believed to be the chosen dwelling place of God and is referenced over 600 times in the Hebrew Bible. Christianity, too, venerates Jerusalem due to its association with Jesus Christ. This is where Jesus was crucified, buried, and later resurrected, forming the cornerstone of Christian doctrine. In the Islamic tradition, the city is known as Al-Quds, meaning holy city, and ranks as the third holiest after Mecca and Medina. Jerusalem is linked to the Prophet Muhammad's celestial ascension to the heavens and his meeting with God. Additionally, other figures associated with the city, such as Abraham, David, Solomon, and Jesus, are all esteemed Islamic prophets. This deep intertwining of spirituality within the Abrahamic faiths has naturally rendered the land a focal point of numerous prophecies. Jerusalem also brims with religious landmarks tied to these faiths. For Judaism, the Western Wall, believed to be a fragment of the ancient temple's retaining wall, serves as a center for prayers and congregations. The Temple Mount, where the first and second temples once stood, is now covered by the Dome of Rock, an Islamic structure built years after the destruction of the Second Temple. This too holds immense significance and is anticipated to be the site of a future Third Temple. In Christianity, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre stands prominently, revered as the site of Jesus Christ's crucifixion, burial, and resurrection. Additionally, the Mount of Olives, associated with Jesus' ascension, and the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus prayed before his arrest, are held in high esteem. For Islam, the Al-Aqsa Mosque within Jerusalem's Old City is a pivotal religious site. The Dome of the Rock also bears significant religious and architectural value and is believed to be the site of the Prophet Muhammad's ascension to heaven. Despite its sanctity, Jerusalem has been embroiled in enduring religious and political tensions. It remains a fiercely disputed territory. The ownership and governance of the city have long been contentious issues between Israel and Palestine, contributing to ongoing conflicts. The recent Hamas-Israel war is not even close to being the first clash over the land. One of the most iconic conflicts to be ever recorded in the region, ironically, did not involve the Jewish people as a major player. Instead, it was the forces of Christianity and Islam that paid in the blood of hundreds of thousands for the Holy Land and the Holy City in a conflict known as the Crusades. The Crusades were a series of religiously motivated military campaigns aimed at conquering Jerusalem and the rest of the Holy Land from the Muslims. By the close of the 11th century CE, when the conflict erupted, Jerusalem had been under Muslim rule for over 450 years. The rise of the Seljuk Turks in the Middle East during the 11th century led to growing concerns among Christian pilgrims and Byzantine Christians about access to holy sites in Jerusalem. In response to these concerns, and spurred by a fervor to reclaim the Holy Land, Pope Urban II issued a call for a holy war in France, launching the First Crusade in 1096 CE. The armies of the First Crusade embarked on a perilous journey across Europe and Asia Minor, facing adversities, infighting, and challenges, before eventually capturing Jerusalem in 1099. This was nothing short of a miracle, considering the weight of the odds stacked against them. Following the capture of the city, the Crusaders brutally massacred its inhabitants, both Muslims and Jews. Jerusalem's conquest led to the establishment of the Crusader states in the region, which endured for nearly 2 centuries. The Crusaders erected fortifications, churches, and institutions, leaving a profound mark on the city's landscape. However, Jerusalem was Al-Quds, as previously mentioned, for the Muslims. The forces of Islam, under the leadership of figures like Saladin, organized and launched counterattacks. In 1187 CE, Saladin successfully recaptured Jerusalem, marking a turning point in the Crusades. His chivalrous conduct during the city's surrender contrasted starkly with the brutality of the Crusader conquest, earning him respect even among his adversaries. The fall of Jerusalem dealt a significant blow to the Crusader states, spurring subsequent attempts, notably the Third Crusade, led by European monarchs such as Richard the Lionheart of England and King Philip II of France, to recapture the city. Despite achieving some territorial gains and securing access for Christian pilgrims, they couldn't reclaim Jerusalem itself. Fast forward a century later, in 1291 CE, the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt, which had succeeded Saladin's empire in the region, pushed the Crusaders out for good by retaking their final stronghold, Acre. The Crusades reshaped political, religious, and cultural dynamics in Europe and the Middle East, fostering trade, cultural exchange, and the transfer of knowledge. The quest for Jerusalem during the Crusades reflects the devotion of Abrahamic faiths to the Holy Land and the complexities of religious fervor during the medieval era. Today, the Middle East reels under the weight of yet another war. This time, Israel and Hamas clash over the coastal strip of Gaza, which has been under siege for almost 2 decades now. As the IDF forces march into Gaza to avenge the assault by Hamas on October 7th, the harrowing visuals of the war have everyone shocked. Hamas, a Palestinian political and militant organization based in Gaza, sparked the conflict with an unprecedented ground offensive against Israel on the morning of the 7th of October. This attack culminated in substantial casualties, some of which are now being blamed on Israel itself, too, in light of recently leaked military intel from the IDF and the capture of approximately 240 hostages. Some of these hostages have since been returned in exchange for Palestinian women and children held in arbitrary Israeli detention. In response to this incursion, Israel retaliated swiftly with a series of airstrikes and a combined air and ground offensive targeting Hamas strongholds in Gaza. Casualties in Gaza have ever since soared, surpassing 36,000 as per the last update, which has not been refreshed for days. The majority of these deaths were that of innocent civilians, particularly women and children. Following a temporary ceasefire, which also saw the exchange of hostages, the fighting has resumed. Israel's objective apparently is to dismantle both the military and governance capacities of Hamas without reoccupying Gaza. To this effect, Israel has shown its readiness via the mobilization of a massive ground invasion force of 160,000, to which they also added by drafting 300,000 reservists. The Israel Defense Forces, IDF, claim successful strikes on hundreds of tunnel shafts used by Hamas. These tunnels reportedly weave a 500 km long web beneath Gaza. However, this military offensive has not been without cost, with IDF casualties climbing higher every day. Most recently, the death of Israel's war cabinet minister's son made global headlines. The IDF has also lost a record number of armored personnel carrier vehicles and tanks in urban warfare. The IDF has announced the deaths of 425 soldiers, while another 1,593 are injured. However, experts estimate that this number is a gross underrepresentation of the actual losses. Nonetheless, the conflict's toll on Gaza's civilian populace is dire. Casualties, property damage, electricity shortages, and a completely crippled healthcare system paint a grim picture. Hospitals lie in ruins due to Israeli strikes, exacerbating an already acute humanitarian crisis. An estimated 1.8 million displaced individuals, overcrowded UN shelters, and scarce resources underscore the gravity of the situation. Israel's unilateral control over Gaza's airspace, shoreline, and land borders further compounds the crisis, drawing international condemnation. The conflict has begun attracting the attention of global stakeholders. Urgent calls for a permanent ceasefire echo across the diplomatic spectrum, and most recently, a UN resolution to this effect attracted overwhelming support only to be vetoed by the USA, Israel's longtime ally. But this chapter of the conflict is one of the many in Israel's history which has been embroiled in one war after the other since its formation in 1948. Behind all this fear and death, however, the resolve of the Israelites to rebuild their temple stands strong. And this, for some, spells the end of the world. The centuries-old desire among Jews to reconstruct the Third Temple in Jerusalem is deeply lined with the realization of ancient prophecies. This, according to the Christians, signifies the imminent arrival of the Messiah. It embodies the rekindling of their historical and spiritual legacy, a sanctuary to revive age-old rites and practices mentioned in the Torah. However, the prospect of rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem is complicated by several social, political, and emotional factors. Since the region hosts a diverse populace entrenched in Jewish, Christian, and Islamic beliefs, reconstructing the temple can evoke all sorts of sentiments. For the Palestinians, it represents a threat to their autonomy, potentially exacerbating existing tensions. Striking a balance amidst these divergent beliefs while upholding societal cohesion stands will be a monumental challenge for the Israelis. But why does the Jewish community place such emphasis on reconstructing this specific temple? Is it purely sentimental, or do they genuinely believe in the ancient prophecies associated with it? For now, we can only speculate about the true nature of their motivations. Presently, the political situation surrounding the Temple Mount is equally convoluted. The territory is claimed by both Israelis and Palestinians, rendering any development a highly delicate and potentially contentious issue. Negotiating a peaceful, acceptable resolution that accommodates the rights and sentiments of all stakeholders is important for a sustainable solution. The challenges don't end here. The Temple Mount area also brims with archaeological treasures. Any construction in this archaeologically rich land will also damage the invaluable artifacts and historical remnants in the area. Excavations and construction activities might disturb or obliterate archaeological remains. This in turn can further disconnect the Jews from the history they fervently seek to reconnect with. Ironic, right? Furthermore, the region boasts a unique ecosystem, and any unchecked development for the reconstruction of the temple could disrupt this delicate equilibrium. Rebuilding the temple also confronts the religious beliefs and practices of other faiths in the region, especially Muslims. Addressing these multifaceted concerns while honoring the beliefs and rights of all faiths requires genuine interfaith dialogue and mutual understanding, which seems elusive for now. Speaking of reconstruction, what is it exactly that the Israelites want to reconnect with? Have you ever wondered what happened during the high times of the Second Temple? Well, before its destruction at the hands of the unforgiving Roman legions, the Second Temple housed religious processions during festivals and special occasions involving elaborate rituals and ceremonies. Here, pilgrims and worshippers would gather in large numbers, especially during key festivals like Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. These processions often began with purification rituals before people would enter the temple precincts. Purity is paramount for engaging in Jewish religious rituals, and it involves immersion in ritual baths known as mikvahs. Speaking of mikvahs, An excavation near the Temple Mount by the Hebrew University of Jerusalem's Institute of Archaeology unearthed a mikveh dating back to when the late Second Temple was still standing. Anyways, the processions were led by priests and dignitaries, carrying sacred vessels and symbols representing the divine covenant between God and the Jewish people. Musical instruments, such as trumpets and cymbals, accompanied the processional march to create a celebratory atmosphere. At the temple, priests made sacrifices of animals, such as lambs or doves, at designated altars. This symbolized atonement, gratitude, or fulfillment of vows on the part of the worshippers. The Holy of Holies, also known as the Kodesh HaKodashim in Hebrew, was the innermost sanctuary within the temple. This was accessible only to the high priest and only on the Day of Atonement or Yom Kippur. The procession and rituals would not access this innermost sanctum, but instead revolved around the outer courtyards and designated areas of worship. Prayers, recitations of psalms, and blessings were uttered by the priests and worshippers, invoking God's favor, seeking forgiveness, and expressing gratitude for divine blessings. Participants also brought offerings and gifts, including agricultural produce, grains, and monetary contributions, to signal their dedication and devotion to God. More practically, these contributions supported the maintenance of the temple and the welfare of the priests and the less fortunate. The temple processions were deeply ingrained in the religious and cultural fabric of Jewish life, fostering communal unity, spiritual devotion, and the reaffirmation of the covenant between God and the Jewish people. Naturally, the Israelites want to bring it all back after all these centuries, and they have taken on the challenge head-on. To this effect, Israel re-established the Sanhedrin, a Jewish religious council, in 2004. It stands as a leading force in the concerted endeavor to reconstruct the temple in Jerusalem. Their primary objective revolves around reinstating Jewish law and reviving temple services. But of course, to revive the centuries-old tradition, much more has to be done before the temple would be of any meaning. They began with the meticulous cultivation of farms and forests to recreate environmental conditions reminiscent of ancient Israel. Their preparations extend to the training of the Kohanim, the priestly lineage tracing back to Aaron, the brother of Moses, and a revered figure in both Judaism and Islam. The Kohanim were once tasked with executing rituals and ceremonies within the temple. In anticipation of the temple's reconstruction, the Sanhedrin has undertaken rigorous training for the Kohanim. This includes using equipment associated with the ancient temples, mastering burnt offerings, and conducting temple rituals. Another critical facet of the preparation is the production of the red heifer, a long-extinct cow breed whose ashes are used in purification rituals preceding entry into the temple. However, bringing these heifers back to life is no easy feat. Not that it has discouraged the Sanhedrin. On the contrary, they have employed innovative genetic engineering techniques, using the Red Angus breed as a base to cultivate the perfect red heifer. For the Jewish rituals, the red heifer must be free of any spots or blemishes, and as per the claims of the Israeli authorities, they have indeed revived the breed. For now, the red heifers have been kept in a secure and secret location until they can once again be used in the temple rituals. The heifers should be preferably between 2 and 3 years of age, not younger or older, as it would render them unusable for the rituals. There's another, perhaps even more practical problem facing Israel before it can rebuild the temple. Israel, as a sovereign nation, heavily relies on its international ties and alliances to maintain its position on the global stage. Any provocation or disruption, such as the reconstruction of the temple in a disputed area, can strain these delicate international relations. Another problem is the financial aspect. The monumental cost involved in a project of this magnitude will also require substantial funding. Israel may need to seek financial support from outside sources. However, relying on external funding will also limit Israel's decision-making in the matter. Furthermore, this ambitious project might be interpreted by some nations as a hindrance to peace efforts, casting a shadow of potential instability over an already volatile region. Such perceptions could trigger diplomatic pressures and economic sanctions, exacerbating challenges for Israel, especially as it struggles to normalize relations with its Arab neighbors. Balancing national aspirations, international relations, and financial responsibilities is thus imperative if Israel is to proceed with the temple's reconstruction. But let's assume that everything goes perfectly for Israel. What happens if Israel is indeed successful in its efforts? Do people even take ancient prophecies tied with the rise of the Third Temple seriously? Well, yes. And it's not without reason. The prophecies surrounding the Third Temple in Jerusalem have been narrated and believed for far too long. Daniel's prophecy, chronicled in the Bible, is a pivotal narrative of the belief surrounding the Third Temple. According to this prophecy, Daniel received a vision foretelling the emergence of a messianic figure, the demise of a city and its temple, followed by the subsequent reconstruction of the temple. This prophecy even outlines a precise timeline. It starts with a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, signaling the countdown to the temple's reconstruction. It also predicts the arrival of an anointed one whose tragic death would culminate in the temple's destruction. Remarkably, historical events have unfolded in alignment with this prophecy. The temple was rebuilt following a decree issued by Cyrus the Great. This was indeed followed by the arrival of Jesus of Nazareth in the Holy Land, who is seen as the Messiah by the Christians and the Muslims, and then, according to Christian tradition, he was crucified. A couple of centuries later, the Second Temple was indeed torched. So far, events seem to be aligning perfectly with the prophecy's sequence. Yet, the prophecy's final phase remains pending. That is the rise of the Antichrist, an influential figure prophesied to ascend to power and play a pivotal role in the events heralding the end times. This charismatic leader will garner support from world leaders, politically and religiously, marking the prelude to the impending Armageddon. In the context of the temple's reconstruction, the Antichrist is said to have forged alliances and treaties with global leaders to undertake this monumental endeavor. This will be a part of a grand strategy to consolidate power and influence over the world. Following the Antichrist's rise and his support for the Third Temple comes Armageddon. This phase in the Earth's history is rooted in the Book of Revelation. It will be the final battle between the forces of good and evil, culminating in the establishment of a new world order under the reign of Jesus Christ, who will descend to the earth again to restore order. Finally, humankind will witness the end of times and face its final judgment before God. As you've probably seen in a bunch of Hollywood films inspired by the concept of end times, the Christian prophecies forecast a series of highly consequential events before the final destruction. And things seem to be going that way. But this is no work of fiction. This is real life, and the consequences of the prophecies, if they are true, will be felt across the globe. Yet Israel remains resolute in reclaiming its land. For the Jewish community, the land where the temple once stood embodies an integral facet of their identity and faith. The aspiration to reconstruct the temple in Jerusalem mirrors their enduring bond with this revered land, signifying an unwavering commitment to safeguarding their cultural heritage and religious traditions. Centuries of exile and dispersion haven't eroded this resolve. Instead, it has only made it stronger. The Jewish people are driven by the desire to reinstate the core of their faith on the Temple Mount. As for the fulfillment of prophecies, for the people of faith, there is no need for any further validation of the unfolding destiny scripted in sacred texts except that it is written. That, for them, is enough. It also strengthens their determination to contribute to the fulfillment of these prophecies. Their actions in today's world, they believe, serve as catalysts for realizing predestined events that will usher in a new spiritual era. The journey towards reconstructing the temple in Jerusalem comes with aspirations drawn from history, religion, politics, and spirituality. And while it is steered by prophecies and propelled by the deep-rooted faith of the Jewish populace, it does not come without a set of very serious and real-life challenges. How does Israel decide to circumnavigate these tricky waters? We can only wait and watch. Thanks for watching. Don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.